A befitting end to one of the most despicable and ruthless mafiosi in the Sicilian mafia's history, known under many names such as the Slaughterer, the Executioner, and even the Pig. His arrest brought relief to those he terrorized for nearly 20 years. Starting out in the late 1970s, Giovanni Brusca would carry out the orders of the mafia and kill without hesitation. When asked how many people he had killed, his reply was simple: more than 100, but less than 200. Added, murder was his business. In his heart, a mafiosi isn't a bloodthirsty person or a terrorist. The rule is that he kills on behalf of the organization. Born in San Giuseppe Giato, a village near the capital Palermo, on the 20th of February 1957, he was born into crime. He came from a long line of mafiosi. His father was still in the local head of his town. By 5, he would visit his father in prison. As he grew older, he aided fugitives on the run with food and clothing, and cleaned his father's weapons, which were stashed and buried in nearby fields. At June the 18th, Brusca killed his first victim. A year later, he killed his second, gunning the target down outside a crowded cinema with a double-barreled shotgun. He came back after the shooting in changed clothes to observe the crowd. With 2 kills to his name, he was officially initiated into the mafia by the boss of bosses, Salvador Tito Riina. Once an official member, he could now use his talent to carry out the orders on behalf of the mafia. He was committed to his work, that on one occasion he was given a time and a place to kill an unidentified target on a certain make of tractor. 3 different people passed by on 3 different tractors, so he killed all 3 of them. Often he would torture his victim to make them talk, but they usually didn't because they knew they were going to die anyway. Either way, torture at the hands of Giovanni Brusca might typically last for half an hour, which probably seemed like an eternity for most victims, as Brusca proceeded from breaking their legs with a hammer to attacking their ears with pliers. 2 men would hold the victim's feet, and another 2 would hold his arms, while a 5th slipped in a nylon cord around the victim's neck and would strangle him. Once the victim was dead, Brusca had creative ways of disposing the corpses. "I've dissolved bodies in acid," he said. "I've roasted corpses on big grills." He wrote in his memories, "Some supergrass feel disgusted for what they did. I can speak for myself. I've never been upset by these things." But Giovanni Brusca didn't just commit murders. He helped to wage war against the Italian state. In the 1980s, as part of Riina's death squad, Brusca and his men battled with police using AK-47s and targeted prosecutors with car bombs. The first to die was Palermo Chief Prosecutor Riccardo Chinnici in July 1983. The force of the explosion blew the car 3 stories high before it plummeted back to earth. 2 bodyguards died with him, and 20 bystanders sustained serious injuries. Riccardo Chinnici had created the Anti-Mafia Pool, a group of magistrates set on bringing down the organization. With Chinnici's death, Giovanni Falcone took over as the head of the Anti-Mafia Pool. He was given unprecedented powers to crack down on Sicilian mafia. Between the February 1986 and January 1992, more than 300 mafiosis were given life sentences in the famous Maxi trial. However, by 1990, many mafiosis brought down by Falcone had appealed and were released on technicalities, with only 30 remaining behind bars. It was inevitable. Both Paolo Borsellino and his fellow magistrate, Judge Falcone, had targets on their backs, and both were indeed dead man walking, and both were killed 2 months apart in bomb attacks. However, one of the most horrific acts of cruelty occurred when Brusca was ordered by Salvador Tito Riina to murder the son of a former Cosa Nostra member, Santino Di Matteo. Giuseppe Di Matteo, who was 11 at the time, was kidnapped in 1993 as a result of his father's testimony against Salvador Riina. It was an attempt to force his father, Santino Di Matteo, to withdraw his anti-mafia testimony against him. He was kidnapped by the mafiosis disguised as officers after they told him that they would take him to see his father. Instead, he was held for 26 months, during which time he was tortured and kept in a squalor. condition. The boy was kept in a cage, beaten and underfed. The kidnappers even sent Santino photo of his battered son during the torture. Santino desperately tried to negotiate with them in order to save his child, but to no avail. Giovanni Brusca gave the order to get rid of the puppy. The mobsters then strangled the young boy to death. He was said to be so weak and exhausted that by this point he didn't even put a resistance. Afterwards, they dissolved the boy's body in acid to ensure that the corpse would never be found. On May the 20th, 1996, then aged 39, Brusca was arrested in a small house in the Sicilian countryside near Argento, where he was dining with his girlfriend and their young son, and his brother Vincenzo and his sister-in-law and their 2 children. 400 men surrounded the house and he and his family were staying in. When 30 men raided the house at 9 p.m., they found Brusca and his family watching a television program on Falcone, the 4th anniversary of his assassination, in 2 days' time. But despite Brusca's vengeance against Di Matteo for becoming a police informant, now he was caught, he soon became a police informant himself. Brusca's testimony led to Rena's receiving additional sentence for ordering the assassination of Judge Falcone and Paolo Borsellino. Despite his cooperation, Giovanni Brusca himself now serving multiple life sentences, a fitting end for a man who had such a grisly career.